Hi, Mage the Podcast fans. This is your host, Terry Robinson. And before we start today's interview with Chris Zach of Twin Cities by Night on how to run an online Chronicle, I'd like to note that we flagged this episode explicit because of cursing. Chris asked before the show if he could curse. I said yes, and he cursed. So if you're not a big fan of F-bombs or the M or F-er phrase, maybe skip this episode, or if you listen with your kids or something. Anyway, if you have strong feelings about language on the show and think we should never curse again, or alternatively you think we don't curse enough, please email us at magethepodcast@gmail.com. Hello, Maids the Podcast fans. This is your co-host, Terry Robinson, and today I have the distinct honor of talking with Chris Zach of Twin Cities by Night. Chris, thank you so much for joining us today. So what have you been up to?
Oh, man, thank you for having me on here. Yeah, I'm doing good, man. I'm just sitting here ready to talk, man. I'm full of cold brew, and I'm just ready to fucking go, man.
Well, I find your presence so energetic that alls I have is decaffeinated Diet Peach Snapple because that's how cool I am. So the reason I asked you to appear and you agreed is you are knocking it out of the park when it comes to running Chronicles where everyone isn't physically around the same table. You do your live plays remotely and so on, and I'd love to just get your thoughts on how to make that happen. What tools do you use to have that go?
Yeah, man, that's a good question. So what we personally use is we use Google Hangouts. And the reason why we use Google Hangouts, there's multiple reasons why. You know, originally when we actually first started Twin Cities by Night, it wasn't meant to be an actual play. It was just me getting a wild hair up my ass, and I'd gotten back into Vampire after 15 years, and I was like, I want to run a game. I didn't know anyone in the area that I lived in, so I just shot out an invitation, found people online. But Google Hangouts is one that I highly recommend to use, and I'm not paid by Google. Google pay me. No,
Big
but
Google.
I'm not paid by Google or anything like that, but the reason that we prefer is for multiple reasons. One is because it's a tool that you can use where you can have, I think, up to 10 people online at once. We actually tested that because every April Fool's we release a goof off game, and we had 10 people on our last one. So keep your eyes open for that. But it's a good one for that. It records to YouTube. So originally when we went to Google Hangouts, we did it because we wanted to archive of our games, because it was at that point my mentality was, hey, I want to be able to go back and look at what happened in the previous session so I can go. It wasn't meant to share, even though eventually now we did it. And it's just it's overall a really awesome tool. It took us a little bit to get used to it, to find its kinks, but if you're planning to share it, it's really good at compressing the audio. It's really good at making everyone kind of sound clearer than they normally do. You can mute your microphones during it. You have a chat program that goes on during it. So if someone's not in the scene, they can sit there and talk back and forth in the chat box. Or if someone's mic is acting up, or someone's like, hey, your mic volume's down or whatever, you could type in the chat box so you could see it, not interrupt the rhythm of the game that's going on. And then we used to use a dice app that was on there that was friggin' horrible, man. I forgot what it was called. If anyone who's listening has heard our unedited earlier stuff where we're complaining about this dice app for 20 minutes and it just broke the game, we now use Discord because Discord has a dice app. Our Discord, one of our Discord founders, Andrew from Twin Cities by Night, set it up to where that's what we use now. But Google Hangouts is what I prefer, and it's awesome, and it's just a tool that we have grown accustomed to. So
you're using Discord to get access to dice and recording on Hangouts. I feel like that would be me using Skype just to text message people or something. Skype's I could do video too. Oh no, and it's just kind of this left out.
Well, we just maybe we could do the same thing on Discord, but we just know for what we do, Hangouts is the best, especially when we rip our audio from the YouTube videos. We find that it's nice, and we'll throw it in Audacity and we'll tweak it a little bit, but for the most part, Hangouts hasn't done us wrong. And when we are doing our actual play, when we're playing online, let's suppose someone, I say, oh, roll, your blah 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 blah, perception alertness. Someone will go on Discord and they'll roll it and they'll be, okay, I got 5 successes. So we always verbally say it for listeners so they can hear it, But yeah, the dice app on Discord works perfectly fine for us.
So when I have my players over, it's literally at my living room table, and I have my stack of books, which I use as my storyteller screen. How do you do consulting the rules during play?
We have multiple ways of doing it, right?
Okay.
I prefer physical copies of the book. That's just me. But we also kind of have designated rules people. Not like it's not an official thing, like you're the rules person or whatever. But we just, after 3 years of being together, we know specific people are in specific games. They're the ones who can usually get an answer quick. And a lot of them have it on PDF. So they'll just sit there and do whatever they do. And a lot oftentimes they'll be like, hey, what's obfuscate 1? And someone will be like, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, all right, cool. That's obfuscate 1. So it's like really easy because it's just the awesomeness, the streamlinedness of being online too. So yeah, it's just someone has a PDF, Control F, or I'll look at the book. I keep little bookmarks. I usually keep like the Vampire Core book or whatever book we're using with me. But for the most part, it's pretty quick and efficient.
Have you ever used the search across all of your text features in DriveThruRPG?
Oh, no. No.
It is absolutely amazing. In your library in DriveThruRPG, there's now 2 search boxes. One is search for by title. The other one is a beta feature of search inside the texts. And this occurred when I got into an internet fight with someone on how chemistry, which is the Ravnos signature discipline, interacted with changelings. And at some point, apparently, I got drunk and bought almost all of the revised and original clan books, and I was just able to search through there and then just start yelling chapter and verse at someone. So that was pretty great.
I keep all alcohol away from me when someone on Facebook group pisses me off because I just don't want to end up buying a bunch of clan books and then yelling, But that's a pretty metal story right there, man. I don't think I've ever heard those words in a sentence together, like chemistry, changeling, and drunk, And that's
There's a perennial argument about what the nature of chemistry truly is. So for our mage fans, vampires are broken down into clans. So you had Cain, the first vampire. He had 3 or 45 kids, depending on on what source you want to use. His 3 or 45 kids had 13 antediluvians literally before the flood. They each started a clan. Each of those has a signature discipline. The Ravnos, which is a somewhat storied clan. They have illusion-centered powers. But one of the odd things about it is, as opposed to it strictly being mental, in the cosmology of the world, they are seizing upon the power of Maya, which in Mage is one of the zones that cuts across the Umbra. So they aren't just doing something strictly in someone's head, but pulling it from a land of dream to have an effect, and that has weird interactions with how changelings work, and that's caused no end of difficulty and is part of the reason why changelings tend to hate Ravnos, for a completely different reason than why everyone else seems to hate the Ravnos. So yeah.
Wow, that's a mouthful. That sounds like the plot of Heavy Metal 3, Heavy Metal 2019. Love it, dude. I'd watch that.
I want to do an extreme Mage edition where we just steal rules from other game systems and just shove them into Mage. I am a diehard lover of archspheres. I am a huge fan of having 6 to 10 dots in a sphere. Will I ever let a player touch it? Not on your life. But am I glad they exist? Yes. So I want to have Mega Arete. I want to have arch spheres. I want to have the Sphere of Paradox that sufficiently advanced players can learn, and I'll release it as an April Fool's supplement. I'm trying to find if anyone in the Mage community is willing to do a commissioned art piece that shows, obviously, a Hermetic-style wizard in a Lamborghini. Please contact magethepodcast@gmail.com. We will work out something. You will be my cover art. We will go from there.
Shit, you're killing me, Smalls.
So back to running a Chronicle. Are there anything that you found is particularly difficult when running a Chronicle remotely, like passing around a handout or giving players things, or alternatively, things that you found were actually easier than trying to do them in person?
Okay, so kind of 2 different things with that question. One is by far, for us at least, the most difficult thing is scheduling. It's because we have players in 5 different countries, I think, 4 different countries right now: Germany, Czech Republic, New Zealand, and then we have Alaska, which is its own country, whatever. Alaska. We have a bunch of people in the States, but we have people in a wide swath of different time zones. And at first, it was really difficult because it was more like, hey, who could play on this day? I could play on this day. Maybe I could play on this day. And it was really hard to correlate and to schedule that. But then I kind of just, because we have multiple games going on. And so now I just have a Google Calendar, and I just everyone has access to it, and I update it hey, this is when our games are going to happen. This is when the release is. And I add people to it, and people look at it. And now it's pretty streamlined. Once in a blue moon, something will happen. Something will come up. That's just life, and someone's like, hey, I can't make it. And then we'll reschedule. But that by far was the hardest thing at first. It was really, really hard, especially when we first started. It was really hard. But then that kind of leads into my second point. A positive is that I feel that when you have to go through and I don't want to say the term hassle because I love my brothers and sisters from Twin Cities by Night, but the when you go through kind of the hassle of like getting everyone on the same page, you find that everyone's more committed to the game table. And I'm going to use an example because it's like, unlike you, all my storytelling I've done and role playing has been online. I've played in one game in the last couple of years that was in person. It was Brendan Carrion's Giovanni Chronicles. Shout out Brendan Carrion. Shout out Full Metal RPG. But like that was my only like tabletop game I've ran in person since I've been doing gaming again. So I find that when players meet up online, there's a sense of purpose, right? Like we know we're here to play. We won't digress. We'll digress afterwards. Once we're done and we hit done recording, we'll bullshit, or we might bullshit a little bit because we'll start our games. I'll start the Google Hangout like a half hour or an hour before we're supposed to play so people can join and make sure everything's technically working and stuff. But I find that, I found that's a good thing. Like everyone knows it's time to play. Everyone knows it's business. I remember playing in Brendan's game, which by the way, it was an awesome game to play in, but I came there with like the online mentality. So I was like focused in on Brendan. I was like ready to go. And then I would see some dude flipping through a book and I'd just be like, bro, like you're like, your storyteller's talking, dude. You need to listen. I was all like into it, but I never said anything, because it wasn't my place. And then I had to remind myself, okay, this is how normal tabletop games go. Guys are going to order a pizza, you know what I mean? Or whatever. That's just how it's going to be. And Brendan did good though, keeping the immersion in there. But that's one thing that I found that really is like people, we're there, and we're there to have fun and we're there to tell a story together. Even if people wouldn't listen, we're there to tell a fucking story with each other and tell a story together. And we have to respect the fact that people have taken the time out of their days and out of their lives to do this. And so that's just how we are now. We're pretty in sync when it comes to that. And it's an awesome feeling.
Oh, that's interesting. On the first note, I hadn't considered the fact that if you're doing a remote chronicle, you're probably dealing with people who may be more geographically dispersed. It may be a game you found out about on a forum or something like that, as opposed to when I was thinking about it, all the players live within 35 or 45 minutes of me, and I'm thinking, hey, we get together on a Friday, we play for 3.5 hours, but if you're spending an hour and a half in a car, maybe it makes more sense to do it that way. But yeah, it makes sense that if you're trying to sync across 17 time zones, that may prove to be difficult.
So a lot of people say, I don't want to play online. I just don't feel connected. Like, listen, here's the thing, man. If you're willing to take the time to vet, to make sure that, imagine this, you go to your gaming store, you put a fucking flyer on there, and you're like, I want to play Vampire the Masquerade, or I want to play Magetheascension, or game XYZ. Your pool of players that you're going to get responding to you is rather limited. I'm not saying you're not going to get good players, right? I'm not saying people have done that, have not gotten good players. But imagine if you could put that flyer out to the world, and then once you get people interested, you can vet them. You can create a questionnaire of like, that's what we did when we added new people. We started with 5 people in Twin Cities by Night. We got 10 now. And every time that we added a new person, we had a process where we put a all hands. Hey, we're looking for new players. People who wanted came in and we vetted them. We had more than like 25 or 30 people last time we wanted to play. And we had a questionnaire, 15 questionnaire. And then me and the other members of Twin Cities by Night at the time would go through and we'd sit there and debate and like, hey, I like their question, or hey, I want more of a clarification on their answer here. And that's why I feel personally that we have a good rhythm now in Twin Cities by Night because we are all on the same page. You know what I mean? We all know what we're there for. So if you have the patience and you really want to run a game and you're listening, you can do it. You just got to have patience. Don't feel like you have to compromise the story that you want to run or tell because you got all these people out there and you're going to find the people that are good. I got lucky and I did, and anyone else can too. So it's, I just have to say that. Try it online.
One of the pieces of advice I hear most often from storytellers with a lot of experience running it in person is not to come up with a story and then try and find players to fit it, but to find players and then come up with a story. But from what it sounds like, if you have this pre-screening process, you can say, hi, my name's Chris Zach. I have this idea. I want to do this epic storyline that's going to result in you guys coming face to face with Nancy Deluvian when we're done, or something similarly ridiculous. And I only want people who are in for that. Can you tell us what kind of questions you were asking on your application, as it were?
Like some of the questions, well, there's a couple, and it wasn't like a requirement when we were looking for people to have listened to us, but a lot of it was like, hey, have you listened to us? How would you describe our actual plays? Like see for people listen to see if they taken away what we are trying to throw out there. And then we'd ask questions like, hey, would you have issues with us? What was the favorite game you've ever played in? What was your favorite character you ever played in the game and why? Would you have issues tackling mature themes? themes? Is there any themes that you feel that, are out of bounds? And those were similar ones that we had. And we had like 10 to like 15 questions, I think. For example, we got a Demon the Fallen game going on. And I remember specifically one of the questions we had on there were like, do you identify yourself as religious? And if so, would you have issues, discussing themes of religion, XYZ, because it's a game that deals with religion. And so it really helps. Just me personally, I don't know if I could like go to a table and have 5 guys play, like want to say that, oh, I'm going to play XYZ. I don't know if I could like be emotionally tied to that game, like creative wise. And maybe I'm not a real storyteller. I'd be willing to accept that. People say, hey, you're not a real storyteller then if you can't do that. But I just know that in my head, I come up with like a skeleton of a story and themes and tones. For example, when I first started Twin Cities by Night, when I was looking for players, I was like, hey, I want to tell a story that focuses more on a lower level of Vampire the Masquerade, that deals with the themes of personal horror, with horror in itself. It may touch some uncomfortable themes, but it won't be disrespectful to these themes, and really kind of like a quote unquote street level game, not really dealing with like Camarilla politics and all that stuff. And I was able to find players who did that. And now when like behind the scenes with Twin Cities by Night, because we have other people who storytell now, someone will have an idea for a story and like, hey, I am wanting to run XYZ game with this XYZ tone and story. Who's interested? And people of our 10 people are like, hey, I'm interested. And we all know what we're getting into together now, and we all know what we're doing. And so it's like a creative process we have all together telling a story. And like I said, even if we weren't recording, we'd be still doing that to tell a story, because that's why we're doing it, So
say I'm a player that is either interested in storytelling for the first time or participating in a remote chronicle, which you've sold me on. Do you have any recommendations on either how players can get the word out that they're interested in playing, or places where players could go to find out what opportunities there are?
I'm going to answer that in 2 ways, right? I'm going to take it from the player's perspective. There is a Reddit group called Looking for a Game, LFG. And you can go on there, and there's people who will post that they're looking for a game. You can keep your eyes open on different groups for people who are looking to run a game. But I think by far the easiest, and I'm just going to be honest, the easiest probably, if you want to be successful, is to be a storyteller trying to find players. Because everyone wants to play. Like, again, you got to be patient, though, but as a player. But if you want to run a story, you're going to have a lot of success. You'll be able to put it out there. You can put it on different Facebook groups. You can put it on Reddit. I mean, whenever we look for a play, we blast it everywhere. Wherever we promote our stuff, we blast it on there. And you'll get a lot of hits like that. But again, I cannot stress vet, because I would hate for someone to put all this work into a story they want to tell and just let anyone play it and have someone not be a good fit just because you're desperate to get someone to play. Just be patient and you will be successful.
One of the most common threads I see on the Onyx Path forums or in the Facebook groups for Mage is, help, how do I take care of this problematic player? What are your feedback mechanisms for your players? Like, hey, I like that you came in with dream and vision, but the way you're running this character is not what you initially told me or doesn't fit with the themes that we're pursuing. How do you have those conversations? Have you ever had to drop a player? What does that look like? Do you have any recommendations for storytellers when you don't have that benefit of being able to look at someone face to face and use body language maybe as easily to give and get feedback and criticism?
I'm very lucky in the fact that the group that we have now, like I said, we kind of are gelling now. So like we've never had to like really be like, hey dude, your character, hey, XYZ. But we always know that like, or as a storyteller, that our players will give us their honest opinion about stuff, and they'll be like, hey, Dad, now we don't, like, to be honest, I can't even remember the last time I heard someone be like, I don't like this. I know that if anyone in Twin Cities by Night is going to have an issue with anything I do, they're going to tell me. And they're going to tell me tactfully, but they're going to tell me. We put a lot of work into this shit, you know what I mean? And like, they're not going to let me down. Now, when it comes to problem players, my advice is cut them. If you're online, just fucking cut the cord. Like, don't put yourself through that shit. I'm not going to get into details, but I had a little period in Twin Cities by Night when we first started where things were a little difficult with someone. And, what both parties amicably have moved on, and we have way past that point. We've been 2.5 years without this person. I wish I would have addressed things earlier. And I'm saying that with all due respect, even with this individual, if they happen to listen. As me as a storyteller, I should have been like, dude, I got issues, but I didn't want to, like, I felt uncomfortable. But I tell you what, now I'd be like, dude, stop. You know what I mean? And if they ever came a bad person or turned out to be a bad person, we'd cut them. It's not worth the headache. You put all this effort. Listen, man, you with your podcast, other actual plays, writers, content creators for World of Darkness games, other games, whatever, you put your fucking part of yourself into that. I don't care how small you may think it is. I used to think that too. Fuck that mentality. You put yourself into that, right? Don't let anyone on the outside taint that or poison that. And it's easy just to cut it off, especially when you're online. But it has to be done sometimes. But go back to vetting. If you vet, like even after you have a questionnaire and you choose some people, have a one-on-one on Skype or on Google Hangouts or whatever, get to know that person. And it's so easy to say no when you don't know a motherfucker yet. You know, when you it's easy to be like, hey, I'm sorry, just not a fit. And we had to do that with people with our questionnaires, and we were respectful. We're just like, hey, we chose someone else. Thank you for taking your time. And that's that easy. Don't rob yourself of a good experience, you know?
Do you make any assumptions of players of their familiarity with the system? Like Vampire, I'm going to say, is a little bit friendlier than Mage to new players. If someone wants to get a Mage Chronicle up and running, do you think it's reasonable for someone to say, hey, I want you to have read this first?
I know how we do it at Twin Cities by Night. We don't require experience in a game if you want to play in it, if you're part of the crew. Matter of fact, like, for example, we like next week, our last chapters of our Changing the Lost Vanity stories running. And Adam, shout out to Adam, part of our crew, was like, never had story told before, period. I was like, I want to run a Changeling game on our fucking podcast, which takes cojones the size of Texas, man. And I was just like, holy cow, all right, cool. And a lot of us were like, I want to play. I had never read Changeling, dude. I just skimmed through it. I'm like, I want to play this game. This is metal. And like everyone, like we were so like excited. So like we've done that with Chronicles of Darkness. I ran my first Chronicles of Darkness game on 20 Cities by Night. I never played it, never ran it, but I just want to try something new. And here's the thing, though. If you have the trust and the faith in the people that you're playing online with, you are not afraid to try new things because you know that these people are not going to let you fail. I tell anyone who is about to ST for the first time on Twin Cities by Night, dude, we will not let you fail. Like, trust in your players. Like, because a lot of people, it's understandable. Like, I'm going to get on this podcast. I'm just going to be like, I'm going to lock up and the game's going to suck and people are going to, like, beat me up online. No, we will not let you fail because we want to try this out, too. And so, like, our Demon the Fallen game that's being recorded, I'm not involved in it, but as we are doing this now, like, none of the players have played Demon the Fallen. And, like, Mitch, who had experience, who's running the game, was like, yeah, that's cool. Let's discover it together. And it almost makes it, like, fun, right? It almost makes it, like, just, like, enjoyable, dude. Like, when I first started Twin Cities by Night with the Vampire Story Negligence, 3 of the people had never played Vampire before, of the 4. And they're brand new to the game. They were just curious. And it was a fun experience. So, yeah, I don't make it a prerequisite. I'm not really a subject matter expert myself. Little secret. You know what I mean? I'm not like a walking around White Wolf. What do you call that? Wikia or whatever that shit is?
The White Wolf Wiki. Thank you very much. You're talking to one of the premier authors of the White Wolf Wiki. My relationship with the Wiki is I improve it as I do book reviews because I'll come across something and like when I did Digital Web, the original one, I read it 20 years ago when it came out. I ran it 10 years ago when I used it again. But now I'm like, crap, this is a giant supplement. No one knows where any of the rules are. I should add this to the wiki. This is my, I guess, monthly call that if you have a supplement or area of the rules that you super understand, go to whitewolf.wikia.com and share your knowledge with the community.
It helped me out recently because I just got done reading Constantinople by Night for the first time, which is a badass book. And I used that to look up like a lot of the character NPCs who are in there, like the future. Great fucking resource, man.
That's how cool I am. I'm a made storyteller. I run a podcast and I edit a
Fuck
wiki.
Yeah.
Again, we are mage folk, not vampire folk. What is Constantinople by Night?
What is Constantinople by Night? So Constantinople by Night, right? And that wasn't like a pretentious, like, oh, dude, that was like me like basking in the glory of that book. Mm-hmm. Constantinople by Night is the 3rd or 4th book released for the Dark Ages, Vampire Dark Ages game line that came out like in 97. And I'm reading through it actually because Nate from 25 Years of Vampire the Masquerade is about to go through those. So I was like, oh, let me read it. By far the best game setting to me is Vampire the Dark Ages. But I can go on about that. But Constantinople by Night was the first city source book that was for that line. And for the most part, a lot of the city books for like Vampire the Masquerade kind of suck. I said that. Like I don't like find them enjoyable. But Constantinople by Night is fucking magical, bro. Constantinople by Night taps into that. I don't know if you ever read Anne Rice, but Anne Rice wrote like she wrote like some of her books like deal with like elder vampires, and she wrote like Pandora and Blood and Gold and a couple other books about that. And this like really taps into that vibe. It seems like the NPCs are intricate. The whole concept of Constantinople in vampire terms was the fact that like one vampire, Michael, and another vampire, Dracone and Antonius, went to Constantinople with the thought of making it like this glorious fucking city. And Michael, the Toreador, who is like kind of the head of this like these three vampires, starts going insane and starts believing he's the Archangel Michael. He actually starts using chemistry to where people, when they view him, they see like the stained glass version of, by far, I feel, just like the intricacy, the NPCs, the politics. There's a couple mages in there. There's an Effendi and there's another mage. I forgot what's in there, but it's a really awesome settings. Everyone should read it. I wish a lot of the City by Night source books were like that. So wonderful book.
Yeah, I think the winner there for maybe you should have done a little bit more homework was, what is it, New Orleans by Night makes mention of the subway system they have there.
The subway system.
Yep.
Or the dirty secret of LA by Night's cover that has a fucking ripoff of Dave Grohl. Like, go look at the LA by Night cover, and there's a character, he's pale because he's a vampire, and he's shirtless, and he's pointing to a tribal tattoo on his forearm. And that's from a picture of Dave Grohl, dude. I used to have this Nirvana photo book that had that picture. I'm like, these motherfuckers are taking making paintings of Dave Grohl and trying to pass it off as original artwork. I don't know. I mean, maybe that was the case.
Inspired by. Okay.
Inspired by.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But the joke about the New Orleans by Night is New Orleans is a city in Louisiana in the United States. This is on the Mississippi Delta. The average elevation is 6 feet below sea level. So the idea of having a subway system there is nigh impossible. So I guess your Nosferatu are going to have to find something else to skulk around. But yeah, it happens.
Let's not talk about Himmler as a vampire in Berlin by Night either. But
oh dear. Yeah. Luckily,
Yeah.
Mage doesn't have a lot of those, where a historical figure was retroactively found out to be a mage. It happens a lot with the technocrats, but vampire, Al Capone being a vampire, that's
God,
okay,
dude. Yeah, I mean, hey, for those of you who like it, I'm not judging.
Yeah,
but like Al Capone, man, like come on, dude. But yeah,
it was the 90s.
It was the 90s. That's all you could say, bro. It was the 90s. It was cool back then. I'm not gonna hate on it. It's historic now.
You've given us some absolutely great information on how to manage this. When you are running it, how do you keep track of notes? Do you have a dead tree copy? Or are you typing into a doc? Do you have any shared docs that the players can look at for like, oh, this is what happened last session and stuff? How do you share information?
So I have dead tree docs. I do bullet points, like I'll have like a page or two of bullet points of scenes that like I kind of want, and like bullet points of them in case. And I mean, a lot of it you have to do impromptu, obviously, because, and I have it printed out just for me because that's how I prefer to see it. And we really don't share documents so too much over the game. There was a game we ran called Wars by Night, which is a Sabbat story that takes place in 1942. And there was a session in it where there was a scene where they're coming up to this house, I guess, right? Like a larger house. And I had this drawing I found online, like a schematic of a larger house. I was just going to use it. And I started sharing it on Hangouts. But then I told myself, I'm like, this is an opportunity for me as a storyteller to try to be able to describe this house. And so later on, fast forward a couple of years, just recently in our Dread story, our Vampire the Masquerade Dread, I had where the characters were in this, for lack of a better term, like projects, like in these 4 apartment buildings. And I drew it out, and I remember like, I'm looking at my computer screen now when I'm talking to you, I had it like the drawing like kind of resting against my computer screen. And I was like, I have to make it my mission in this session to describe it so well that they are going to understand where they're at. And I think I was successful. I was using like northeast, northwest building, you know what I mean? The side of it. And so like, and never once were they like, wait, I'm lost. So I try not to share too much, to be honest with you, because we are now like, we really, even though we started as a YouTube channel, we really want to focus on our podcast. So I try to articulate it as best as I can.
One of the things I like doing as a storyteller is I will have a few key terms that I've dumped into DeviantArt, maybe to find some mood pieces and stuff like that. Will Hangouts allow you to share an image to a group? I guess if push comes to shove, you could hold up something to your webcam if everyone's streaming.
You can share your screen, and you can also put links into the chat box, because sometimes, like if someone's not in a scene and I'm in a scene with someone and something will remind them, they'll just find a goofy picture and throw the link in the chat box, and someone will click it, and it'll like, whatever, just to kind of make light of something. People won't see it who are watching or whatever, but yeah, we there's always a way to do it, definitely.
Nice. Now, you've mentioned that you have all these plots going. Where are you searching for inspiration for these?
Man, life. I just like everything, know, like I'm a type of dude where I always have to be busy. Like I always have to be active. And, I was like that in the military. I did a bunch of things in the military. I got out. I went to college, got my master's degree. And there was just a point in my life where like, okay, like I have two sides of me. I have like the Neanderthal caveman side who needs to do knuckle dragger shit. I have this side of me where I'm actively on my brain, creative, whatever side, I have to keep that busy. And so I found like when I was going to school for like 6 or 7 years, I was, as an adult learner, I would go train, do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, lift weights, and then I would write papers. And I found like writing papers and shit like that was scratching that itch. And then once I got my degree, I just was like, fuck, what am I gonna do with myself? Because I'm one of those guys who are like, I'm afraid like what happens when you stop. I'm always go, 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 go. And so like when we started playing Twin Cities by Night, like I said, at first it was just me playing and I felt like I was being creative, but now like 3 years later, man, like I feel like this is me sharing, and it sounds pretentious as fuck, but this is me sharing myself and leaving part of myself creatively wise out there. You know, like I always wanted to be a writer. I always wanted to do XYZ, and I just never had the balls to do it. Like through my 20s, I wanted to write, just never had the balls to do it. Props to all you people who write. I just didn't. Now I probably never will because I write in crayon, but like this is something where I feel like I am doing something, you know, and I am creating something and I'm putting it out there, and I just love it now. I have a mage game I want to run. We didn't even talk about this before we recorded. I have a whole mage chronicle. Yeah, once I'm done with my Vampire Chronicle, which is going to take a couple years, I have a Mage Chronicle I'm going to call Hubris. It's going to deal with the 60s and 70s. It's going to like fucking deal with all the fucked up shit that happened in the 60s, 70s American culture-wise. Like, it's going to be fucking insane when I get to it. But like, I have all these ideas. Anyone who fucking knows me, they're listening, and especially if they're in Twin Cities by Night, they're going to be like, this motherfucker always talks about different games he wants to run. Like Constantinople by Night. I want to run a Wraith game set in 1970 San Quentin prison. I want to run XYZ. Like I have all these ideas, but it feels good. It feels fucking good that I can go and do this, and it's an amazing thing, man. And I'm a motivated motherfucker, man, and this shit just keeps me going, dude. So I love it, man.
Yeah, I'm super excited to hear about Hubris, and hopefully you can either share some deets as that goes along if you want to share your storyteller creative process at some point, or if Maids of the podcast listeners want to possibly be members of that and submit applications.
Yeah, we'll see when I get to it, right?
Yeah, but if we can pivot to the activities you do as a storyteller, like how do you just keep track of all this stuff? Like I'm a person that I keep a small notepad in my breast pocket, and at the end of the day, I write that into a little Google Doc, and that eventually makes its way into OneNote, which is where I share all my clippings. What's your creative process like?
When I first started Twin Cities by Night, I like typed up like this 30-page document of all the shit that I wanted to do in it, and a lot of it changed, you know, just because of the story ideas, plot ideas. You kind of realize, oh, that's cliche. I want to kind of do this. I want to kind of do this. But now at this point, it's like all up here in my head. Like what I'll do is before every session, I'll listen to the last 3 podcast episodes, which was from the previous session, just to like kind of refresh stuff. And I'll start just like putting bullet points. I'll do it like over a week or two, you know, while I'm listening, or like I'll be at work and I'll have it like up on my second screen. I'll be doing other shit. And then I'll like, oh, hey, and I'll just add the notes, and I'll just take my time. I won't rush it. You know what I mean? I won't sit to be like, I have an hour. I got to like put notes in. I'll just kind of like let it organically come to me. The only time I've done like a whole Chronicles notes was like, I'm about to run a mini series of Ghoul's Fatal Addiction, like maybe 2-3 part mini series. I've done all the notes for that, but for the most part, it says here when I'm running or when I'm like doing the knuckle dragger shit and I'm like physically like exhausted and you're just left with your thoughts. Like that's when a lot of that shit comes to me when I'm doing that. It sounds weird, but it's when I'm clearest, you know?
I think the weirdest note-taking thing I have is I sleep in the same room as my cell phone, and I have an Android device, and sometimes as I'm drifting off, I'll have an idea and just yell, okay, Google, take a note. Have characters encounter the spirit of Colonel Sanders in an umbral realm. And it just writes a little note that automatically goes to Google Keep. So,
dude, that period, like when you're about to go to sleep, like laying in bed and you're just alone with your thoughts, like that's when I'm like hashing out shit in my head. I've had so many like story arcs where I've like kind of know how it's gonna end, but I haven't like just like got the final touches where I've just laid there in bed and been like, oh shit, you know what I mean? Just like because you're alone and you're just thinking and you're just like it's pure thought at that moment. So yeah, that's an awesome idea. Google, write this shit down.
And the funny part is when I yelled that, my phone woke up and just took a note to have my characters encounter Colonel Sanders in an umbral realm. So now I've got 2 of those kicking around. So good job, me. This has been an amazing exploration of the work you're doing. Do you want to just give us a full rundown, I guess, of what Twin Cities by Night is at this point, and for interested listeners where they can get more information?
Oh yeah. So Twin Cities by Night is a podcast where we do actual plays and we do kind of like bad attempts at like subject matter podcasts. I'm being self-deprecating, but our podcast that does actual plays, we've had a bunch of story arcs that have finished already, and we're constantly doing new ones. Like currently right now, we just wrapped up a Changeling the Lost Chronicle. We have a Hunters Hunted 2 Chronicle going on, and we have my Vampire the Masquerade Twin Cities by Night Dread story arc going on. We are Demon the Fallen is just happening now. We're recording that. We're about to start a Chronicles of Darkness game that takes place during the Hussite Wars and the Czech Republic, and I believe the 17th century. It's going to be an interesting thing where two players are going to play mortals, and the other two are going to play demons trying to corrupt these mortals during this like war that is going on. And then we have that going on. And we got one shots going on that we're about to have another Call of Cthulhu one shot going on, which is really awesome. And then we're going to be doing the Ultimate Evil, which is a Chronicles of Darkness game that takes place in Bismarck, North Dakota in 1987. All that stuff you can find on iTunes, SoundCloud. You can find it on our Twitter at twin_cities_VTM, or on Facebook at Twin Cities by Night. We also have a podcast called The Brian Diaries, where we talk about shit or we invite people over, inspired by real podcasts like Mage the Podcast. Props to you, by the way. And we have another one called The Brian Book Club, where I'll take like books in the horror genre and talk about how they can be used as inspiration in World of Darkness games and what you can take away from them. And also one thing I want to promote too is we have this Facebook group called White Wolf and Onyx Path RPG Gameplay and Media. And what it is this Facebook group where we want content creators to be able to go on there and share podcast, actual play, storyteller vault stuff, blogs, whatever, like Twitch streams, any of that shit. And the reason why we created is because we wanted to be able to have it to where content creators would get the attention we feel their content deserves. Now, not hating on other Facebook groups or whatever, but a lot of times you'll share your stuff in there and it will get kind of drowned out. And so in here, what we have where people can share it, and we want to make it like the Netflix of World of Darkness, Onyx Path Publishing content. And so people can go on there and they can see your stuff and your stuff can be discovered, because we know how hard it is to get discovered. You know, when we first decided to start sharing our stuff, it was so frustrating. You get passive aggressive attitude, or you're not getting like promoted by anyone, and it's really in your own hands to do it. And so we wanted to, like, I'm all about this, man. Like, listen, none of us are getting rich off of podcasting, right? None of us are going to fucking make podcasting baller money. We make jokes on Twin Cities by Night about that, but really we're not. And for me to even get more of a sense of a reward is to being able to help others out. Like, I feel like maybe we weren't as Twin Cities by Night, or find ways to help raise others up. And that's what this group is for. We just want to do that. We have these little tags where people could put like Mage the Ascension or whatever. And then people, if they want to find Mage the Ascension stuff, like people who want to consume media, they can click on Mage the Ascension. They can see, boop, boop, these are all the people who have tagged that in there, and make it easy. And then we just avoid drama, man. And we just want to make it to where content creators and people can find stuff. So check that out. Check out other content creators. Go check them out on there. And much love, man, to everyone who's adding to the ether. I used a mage term, ether.
Aw, thanks. There's a certain bravery it takes to just make something, write it down, run it, and then share it with people. On that regard alone, you have infinite respect from me for your sheer willingness to put out your creative efforts.
Hey, man, that bravery thing goes to every single fucking person doing it, man, for real. My one advice being a content creator is don't think a couple pieces of advice. Don't think you're owed anything by anyone. And that's a hard feeling. That's a hard feeling, especially if you think you're progressing. It's on you to promote your shit. 2, don't become complacent. Don't become stagnant. Always try to find ways to better your stuff. Always try to find ways to improve it. And 3, just fucking have fun doing it, bro. If you don't have fun doing it, then it's time to maybe stop doing it. And there's no stigma against that, man. If it's time to retire it. But don't feel obligated like you got to keep doing something if you're not enjoying it, man. And that's my I guess words of wisdom when it comes to that shit.
I think they're pretty good words. Like, that's kind of tough to beat. I look back over the last 15 years of my life, and it's been marked by 3 or 4 year arcs where I got really big into a hobby or built a certain kind of community or did something like that. And every one of them had a natural end. And usually the worst part was either not being willing to end a project when it is obvious that you've gotten everything out of it. And there's also that moment of terror when that project ends and you go, well, what am I going to do with my life now? Despite the fact that you've already gone through 7 of those cycles, and in every one you came up with your new project that allowed you to create something that was meaningful and enriching to the world. There is still that moment of terror when you go, crap, what do I do now? You don't seem to have that problem because you have your next 72 projects lined up. So
man, this is just like, it's so fucking new to me, bro. Like a little quick history to me. Like, I gamed only for like a year and a half, like in 2000. And then I stopped. I had military priorities. And then like I picked it up again 3 years ago. So this is a whole fucking new world to me, man. Like, I'm reading a book that Josh Heath, shout out Josh Heath, Werewolf the Podcast, just fucking high level games, all that shit. Recommended Designers and Dragons. this book in the history of RPGs, and they have one for the 70s, one for the 80s, one for the 90s, and one for the 2000s. And I'm just like 5 pages in the 70s one. I'm like, this is a whole fucking new world. Like I'm learning about Dungeons and Dragons, how it fucking started. And it's like seriously, like I cannot express the excitement that I fucking feel for all this, man, for like just doing the podcast, being on your podcast, man, like just all this shit. It's just so fucking amazing, dude. It's such an amazing thing. And for all the people who have made this like scene, I always call it a scene. I don't know what other way to describe it. Thank you. Like, thank you for what you've contributed. And for real, it's fucking awesome, dude. So I'm really stoked.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's a scene that's still small enough that someone with a really good idea who's willing to do some hustle can start changing it. If there is not a mage chronicle out there that you see that focuses on the themes that you're interested in or the topics that are concerning to you, there is still more than enough space to put your imprint on it, either through Storyteller Vault or by running your own live play. You can get that message out.
Amen. Amen. Like all these motherfuckers who are like, there's not enough room for all these. Like, what? Like, are you the internet virtual adepts say it's infinite, right? But like seriously, like there's all this ether out there. Do your fucking thing, man. Do your fucking thing. Have passion for your fucking thing. And I'll tell you what. You have passion for your shit, and you fucking like you really in your heart of hearts are enjoying it. People will notice. People, trust me. People who listen, who view stuff, will see the person who has passion and who's doing it for the passion, or the person who's just coloring the fucking paint by the numbers because they think they're gonna cash in, dude. And trust me, big secret, dude. And maybe if you get hooked up with Geek and Sundry and all that shit, like more power to you. But like I said, for those of you who may come in here and think, oh, I'm gonna fucking get like fucking all this acclaim and be the next Matt Mercer. Good luck with that, dude. You know what I mean? Like you're gonna see eventually that like it's just not how it is, man. You know, and you gotta love it, dude, to do it. And I fucking love it.
And if you are a creator for Mage the Ascension or associated lines and you'd like to come talk to Mage the Podcast audience about that, by all means, hit us up, magethepodcast@gmail.com, at Mage the Podcast on Twitter. Find us on Facebook as well. My name, again, is Terry Robinson. By all means, reach out to us. We'd love to hear your story. Chris, thank you so much. That started out as a thing on how do I use Google Hangouts, and it kind of turned into a call to arms to be a creative professional. So thank you so much for that. I feel like I need to go jogging and then do some push-ups or something to just like burn off that residual energy. Thanks.
Dude, I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm hyped up. It's all the Cold Brew and Black Sabbath I listen to, man. It just gets me fucking going, dude. So hell yeah, man.
Well, we look forward to talking to you again when your Hubris Chronicle gets up and running.
I'll see you in 10 years then, bro.
Yeah. Hopefully we're still going then. At the current rate at which we do book reviews, we will be comfortably into revised.